The Late Show studio was already tense before the cameras turned on. Not chaotic, not loud, just tense in the way that happens when everyone in the room knows something might go wrong, and no one's sure who will pull the trigger. But tonight was a powder keg. A producer had just rushed to Stephen. Kennedy's not backing down. He brought documents about Fauci. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was scheduled to appear as the lead guest. It had been pitched as a discussion about environmental law, his decades of advocacy work, finding common ground on climate issues. But that was just the version the public saw. Behind the scenes, there were emails, conditions, and warnings. RFK Jr. had only agreed to appear if he could discuss public health honestly. That meant no censorship of vaccine discussions, no shutting down debate about COVID policies, and no protecting sacred cows. Colbert's producers had agreed. Or at least they said they had. But just minutes before they walked onto the set, Stephen was told by network lawyers, if he mentions Fauci, shut it down immediately. And RFK Jr. came loaded for bear. When Kennedy finally stepped onto the stage, the tension was palpable. The audience applause was mixed, some enthusiastic, others suspicious. He walked with the confidence of a man who'd been fighting powerful interests for decades, and sat. Stephen was already defensive, his usual smirk replaced with wariness. He opened cautiously. Stephen said, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., environmental lawyer, and, well, let's just say you have some interesting opinions about public health. Already framing him as fringe. RFK Jr. caught it immediately. He said in his distinctive voice, interesting opinions? You mean like questioning why pharmaceutical companies have zero liability for their products? That's not opinion, Stephen. That's fact. Stephen shifted uncomfortably. He said, let's stick to the environment. RFK Jr. interrupted. He said, you can't separate environmental health from human health. The same companies poisoning our rivers are poisoning our bodies. The same regulators failing to protect our water are failing to protect our children. The audience stirred. This wasn't the crazy anti-vaxxer they'd been told to expect. Stephen tried to redirect. He said, but surely you trust our medical institutions. That's when RFK Jr. pulled out a folder. He said, you mean like Dr. Fauci? Should I trust the man who funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan? Who lied to Congress about it? Who silenced scientists who disagreed with him? Stephen's face went pale. He said, that's conspiracy. RFK Jr. stood up, holding the folder. Not aggressively, just purposefully. He said, conspiracy? These are Fauci's own emails. FOIA documents. Congressional testimony. Which part is conspiracy? The documented facts or your refusal to discuss them? Stephen stood too. He said, we're not doing this. RFK Jr. turned to the audience. He said, this is what happens every time. They invite me on to discuss issues, then panic when I bring evidence. They want debate without facts, discussion without documentation. Now, what happens next is exactly why this footage never made it to air. They don't want you to see what happens when someone brings receipts about America's most protected bureaucrat. If you want to see the documents they're terrified to discuss, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what RFK Jr. reveals about Fauci will change everything you believed about COVID. RFK Jr. opened the folder. He said, February 1st, 2020. Fauci emails showing scientists said COVID looked engineered. By February 4th, after Fauci's pressure, they changed their tune. Want to see the emails? Stephen was panicking. He said, this is misinformation. RFK Jr.'s voice rose. He said, these are Fauci's own emails. How is quoting someone verbatim misinformation? How is reading government documents conspiracy theory? He pulled out another document. RFK Jr. continued. Here's Fauci admitting cloth masks don't work. Here's him saying different in public. Here's him acknowledging natural immunity, then denying it. Which Fauci should we trust, Stephen? The audience was riveted. Some looked shocked, others uncomfortable. Stephen tried desperately. He said, Dr. Fauci saved lives. RFK Jr. exploded. He said, he destroyed lives. Small businesses crushed while Amazon thrived. Children's development damaged by lockdowns he knew wouldn't work. Elderly dying alone while he went to baseball games. He turned back to the audience. RFK Jr. said, "Your government lied to you. Not made mistakes, lied. Knowingly, deliberately. And when doctors tried to speak up, they were censored. When scientists disagreed, they were destroyed. When patients wanted different treatments, they were denied." Someone in the audience shouted, "You're killing people with misinformation." RFK Jr. pointed at them. He said, "I'm reading government documents. If that's killing people, what does that say about your government? If Fauci's own emails are dangerous misinformation, what does that make Fauci?" Stephen moved toward him. He said, "You need to stop." RFK Jr. didn't budge. He said, "Stop what? Stop reading? Stop thinking? Stop questioning? This is America, not China. We're allowed to examine evidence. We're allowed to challenge authority." He held up another paper. RFK Jr. said, "Here's Fauci saying the lab leak was impossible while privately discussing it was probable. Here's him coordinating with tech companies to censor scientists. Here's him." Stephen shouted, "Security." RFK Jr. kept going. He said, "Of course. Can't debate the facts, so remove the messenger." This is exactly what they did to doctors who prescribed early treatment, to scientists who questioned lockdowns, to anyone who dared challenge St. Fauci. Security started moving in. RFK Jr. spoke faster. He said, "They're removing me for reading government documents, for quoting official emails, for presenting evidence. This is your democracy. This is your science. Shut down anyone who asks questions." The audience was split, some cheering Stephen, others looking disturbed by what they were witnessing. RFK Jr. turned to them one last time. He said, "Everything I've shown you is public record. Look it up yourself. Read Fauci's emails. Read the FOIA documents. Read what they didn't want you to see. Then ask yourself why they need security to stop someone from reading." As security grabbed his arms, RFK Jr. shouted, "Fauci knew. He knew about Wuhan. He knew about the lab. He knew the lockdowns wouldn't work. He knew natural immunity was real. He knew and he lied. Read the documents." They dragged him off, papers scattering across the stage. Stephen stood there, visibly shaken, surrounded by government documents on his floor. And what happened next sent shockwaves through the media establishment. After RFK Jr.'s removal, the studio erupted into chaos. But unlike other times, the audience wasn't united. They were deeply divided. He had actual documents. Those could be fake. Why wouldn't they let him show them? Because they're lies. Then prove their lies. Stephen tried to restore order. He said, "Obviously we can't platform dangerous conspiracy theories." Someone shouted, "But were they conspiracy theories or government documents?" Another voice, "Why can't we see for ourselves?" Stephen's composure cracked. He said, "Because some things are too dangerous. Too dangerous to read," someone else called out. "Since when?" The show cut to commercial immediately, but the damage was spreading like wildfire. During the break, several audience members picked up the scattered papers RFK Jr. had dropped. They started taking photos, reading them, passing them around. One audience member later posted, "I grabbed one of the papers. It was real. An actual Fauci email talking about masking being theater. I'm vaxxed, I followed all the rules, but this bothered me. Why hide this?" When the show returned, they went straight to a pre-taped segment. The live portion was over, but the real drama was just beginning. Backstage, chaos reigned. Lawyers were screaming at producers. CBS executives were on emergency calls. The decision was made. The entire episode would be scrapped. Never aired. Complete media blackout. But RFK Jr. was already in his car, posting videos. Just got physically removed from Colbert for reading Fauci's emails. They called security rather than discuss public documents. This is what media capture looks like. This is why trust is dead. Within hours, #ShowTheDocuments was trending. People who'd never questioned the narrative started asking, if the documents were fake, why not just prove it? Why the panic? Why security? Other media figures started distancing themselves. Even some who disagreed with RFK Jr. were uncomfortable with the optics of dragging someone off stage for presenting documents. A journalist tweeted, "I think RFK Jr. is wrong about vaccines, but removing him for reading FOIA documents? That's not journalism. That's something else." The scattered papers became infamous. Audience members who'd photographed them shared them online. They were real, actual government emails, real FOIA documents, real congressional testimony. The very act of suppressing them made them spread faster. CBS tried damage control, claiming technical difficulties prevented airing. But audience members broke their NDAs. It wasn't technical. Kennedy had receipts, real documents. They panicked. They literally dragged him off for reading government emails. I've never seen anything like it. The blackout backfired spectacularly. People who'd never heard of RFK Jr.'s claims suddenly wanted to know what was so dangerous about government documents that they required physical removal. Independent journalists started digging into the documents RFK Jr. had referenced. Many were shocked to find they were authentic. The emails were real. The contradictions were real. The cover-ups were documented. A medical professional posted, "I supported all COVID measures. But I just read the Fauci emails RFK Jr. was trying to show. We were lied to. Repeatedly. Knowingly. I feel sick." Stephen never addressed the incident publicly. The Late Show pretended it never happened. But insider reports said he was rattled, asking legal repeatedly. Were those documents real? Did we just censor real documents? The answer, apparently, disturbed him greatly. Within weeks, other shows started refusing to book anyone who might bring up Fauci critically. The very mention of his name became radioactive. But this only fueled more suspicion. RFK Jr. appeared on every podcast that would have him, each time bringing more documents. He'd say, "Colbert proved my point better than I ever could. They're so terrified of truth, they need security to stop reading." The incident became a watershed moment in media trust. Not because everyone believed RFK Jr., but because everyone saw the panic, saw the censorship, saw the fear of documents. A media critic wrote, "Whether you agree with Kennedy or not, the sight of him being dragged off stage for presenting government documents should disturb everyone." When did reading become dangerous? The Late Show's ratings among independent voters plummeted. Trust in media hit new lows. The very act of hiding the documents made millions want to read them. RFK Jr. didn't just get kicked off a show that night. He exposed the mechanism of suppression. He revealed that some truths are too dangerous for television. He showed that documents could be more threatening than violence. And in being silenced, he spoke louder than any interview could have. The revolution wasn't in what he said. It was in what they wouldn't let him say. And everyone saw it. The documents scattered on Colbert's floor that night became symbols of questions that can't be asked, of evidence that can't be shown, of truths that require security to suppress. The establishment won the battle that night. But in winning, they revealed themselves. And that revelation was worth more than any interview. Retry in.